Welcome to Verbal Pick Radio, where we give you a verbal image of life, and we are everyday people. Like to welcome you all to the show. This show on MLK Day, I know we're honoring a great fighter for civil rights and black people. But I wanted to extend this to all the Americas, especially South America, Brazil. Martin Luther King was a fighter for black people globally, especially towards the end of his life, where he stated that he believed he was leading his people into a burning building or a burning house because he knew the mindset of America. He felt as though they had no intentions and no good intentions on sharing this country with black people and being equal with black people, whether it be, i.e., justice, economics, business, housing, and what have you. And right after that speech was the last speech he gave. He was murdered because he was starting to change his outlook and his view on a direction that the civil rights was headed, and he was becoming to actually adopt some of Malcolm X's positions. But you have to go through the fire, I should say, to understand. And you have to allow people, and sometimes you have to sit back and, let them go through it so they can see for themselves and let them exhaust. It's like the Abraham theory. Exhaust every measure to see if the people that you're trying to get something from, or you're trying to convince, or you're trying to teach them to see things your way. You got to give that person time where he can exhaust every avenue in trying so he would eventually come back and say, okay, I tried everything. I left no stone unturned, and I don't think they're going to give us justice. So we need to take a different approach. And that's actually what it was about in his later days. So now we want to get into Ganga Zumba. He fought one of the largest slave rebellions in South America, Brazil. I want to thank Sonia Carvalho for bringing this to my attention, because she liked the post I did. So thank you once again. She's one of the subscribers. And if you all haven't yet subscribed to Verbal Pick Radio on the YouTube channel, VRBALPIC Radio, and also on the Everyday People the movie, and watch the movie. It's out now, and we'll post that docudrama on the Verbal Pick Radio YouTube site as well. So let us get started, because I know most of you saw the movie Black Panther, and dealing with the warrior for Wakanda, the female warrior, the sister. Because you had females who led warrior tribes. And we want to talk about Aquatune. Aqua, that's Aqualtune, Aquatune. This was 1665, was a Congo princess who was the daughter of an unidentified Mani Congo, according to the tradition. She was the mother of Ganga Zumba and the maternal grandmother of Zumba. And that's Zumba, is Zumbi. Zumba later was kidnapped from his mother while he was feeding, and hid away into slavery. Portuguese kidnapped him, but later he returned to his people, escaped, returned, and became the leader after Ganga Zumba. All right, we're going to get into this. Now, who is Ganga Zumba? Was the first leader of the massive runaway slave settlement of Quilombo dos Palmares, or Angola Janga, in the present-day state of Alagoas, Brazil. Zumba was a slave who escaped bondage on the sugar plantation and eventually rose to the position of highest authority within the kingdom of Palmares and the corresponding title of Ganga Zumba. Now, check this out. This is how it went down. Ganga Zumba, being the son of Akhlutun, a female warrior who led, she was defeated in war, but she led thousands to fight back. That's that's the warrior spirit within the sisters, within the black women, right? Within women, within indigenous women. Let's say that. Now, the Portuguese, check this out. The Portuguese arrived in Brazil in 1500s, right? But the Indians, the natives that were there, were black. But the Portuguese had slaves who were working on a sugar plantation, right? That they called Negroes, right? Now, story. If you go back and do your research, blacks left Africa between 16 and 20,000 years ago and traveled to the Americas. We're really popular when Pangea, as you heard Brother Cliff on the previous show, Black in the Americas, and we was talking about Pangea and how we were able to walk to different places, and we was populating all over this planet, right? So when the Portuguese came to Brazil and saw all of these black people, and they had Ganga Zumba was one of the slaves. Well, they didn't know that if you look in Brazil, the same dance and artwork, and you hear Brother Farrakhan talk about the beadwork, the artwork of the Indians had the similarities to the bead and artwork in Africa, right? Okay, so the Portuguese didn't know that they would recognize one another because what they call native Brazilian took the same dances and the history and the folklore out of Africa when they brought it to the Americas. So when the slaves and what the slaves, or what the Portuguese called the Negroes, and they called the ones from Africa, they called Negroes, and the blacks that was native to Brazil, they called them Indian, which meant indigenous or indigo for black, right? But they hooked up and defeated the Portuguese. The Portuguese thought that their slaves would be on their side, but they helped their brothers, and they all joined together and defeated the Portuguese, because they were saying we'd never be slaves again after that. And Ganga Zumba, he led that rise, and that's you can look him up, Gangazumba. He led that uprise. But the point I'm trying to make is, the same thing happened in North America, South America, Central America, all the Americas. Whether you had the Spaniards come over here, black folks was here, and they took over the land, the Spanish, the Portuguese, or the Romans who came to the Americas and took the land from the indigenous people, and then they set up rule. But now, one of the leaders, one of the generals of Ganga Zumba, who was going to take a little small town where they had the Portuguese there, right? He stopped. He said, look, if we go in that town and we conquer that town, we will inherit the slaves, and we will have to be indoctrinated into their system and their way of things. Because when you go, I don't care where you go, if you are a conquering body and you enter into someone's land and you conquer that land, you will take on those traditions, you would take on the language, and you would take on the problems, you would take on the mores and the cultural ways of that town in which you conquered or took over. So he was like, I don't want to be like them, and I don't want to inherit their slaves. Let's go. He didn't take the town. That's very key to show you that when the Europeans came to the Americas, they left speaking like like if you was to go to Sweden, if you was to go to Dutch lands, if you was to go to England, Britain, they had that accent. But when they came to the Americas, over time, you saw they lost that accent because they had got encompassed into the culture that was already here, into the traditions that was here. They may have changed the names and changed the faces, but the culture was already here before they got here. They may have put on some of the you might have a pale Indian who put on the clothing and the garbs of the original, and they studied the language and the dances of the original, but it still don't make them the original, if you get what I'm saying, because because they were encompassed into what was already in existence. Can you get it? Meaning, like, you could come from Africa and move to the Americas, and your children, that next generation, they'll slowly begin to lose that accent, and they'll sound like they've been in America all their lives. Mexico, you can leave Mexico, and that next generation will lose that accent. Because that's what happens when you enter into a place where a system is already set up, a dialogue is there, cultural ways is there. When you come into that society, you begin to take on the characteristics of that society. So now, check this out. So the Portuguese come. Now the Moors was already conquering Spain. The Moors was in Portugal, and the Moors was in Spain. They conquered Spain, and the Moors was in Italy. But after 1492, when the Moors lost at Granada in Spain, and Pope Innocent was like, look, wherever you find black folks, the Moors or indigenous, if they not Christians, take the land, right? So the Moors was having children with the Visigoths. The Visigoths was the whites who came from Europe into Spain, Portugal, and it was learning the ways. They was learning the culture that the Moors already had set up. Okay, so that's why you'll see the change in, if you see the early Europeans dress, then after they came in contact with the Moors, you'll see their clothing and style change in the whole nine, because they left the caves, like the Northmen and the Visigoths and the Goths and the Vikings and the whatnot. You see, over time, their clothing started to change, and they started taking on the royal system and living in these castles and whatnot that was built by the Moors, because the earlier European Visigoths and Goths and Northmen, they wasn't living like that. Barbarians, they were living in holes and inside in caves and whatnot. The queen, she wasn't even taking baths. They introduced them to take the Moors. The black Moors was introducing them to even taking a bath, right? Soap and cleaning yourself. So now these Moors was having children with the Europeans. So the offspring, the mulattoes, you can see Charlotte, Charlotte, Carolina, was named after Princess Charlotte. Is direct, and we did a show on that, the direct bloodline all the way to Queen Elizabeth, right? Queen Victoria, Queen Elizabeth. That bloodline is there, right? So the Moors was defeated at Granada in Spain. They was losing their rule, but you had some who was still in power, and you had some of the offsprings, like the father was black, mother may have been white, and so, but the child, or you can say, the child between the Moors and the European wanted to rule, but they helped the European side of the family overcome the indigenous or the black people. They helped them to take their lands. And after they helped them to take their land, then they were shunned. It was just like if you watch Geronimo in the Americas when the Apaches was helping the colonizers to put their own people on reservations, right? Well, after they finished rounding up Geronimo and putting them on a train headed to Florida on the reservations, the guides who helped them capture their own people, they captured them too. That's the point I'm trying to make. Because nobody likes a snitch is what I'm saying. They see you as a sellout because you sold your own people out. They didn't see them as one of them. They didn't see them as their brethren or you just like us. You know what I mean? Just because your father was black and your mother was white, that offspring, they enslaved them too. Because they couldn't trust them, because they said, you're not one of us, and you turned on your own people. But Ganga Zumba, so look, so you had one Moor, you had Ganga Zumba, and they fighting over a white woman, right? I mean, look, white women who listen to the show, this is just history. Hey, you got brothers out there backing it. Look, when General Muck was rounding up all he could find and was taking them back to the Caucasus, was taking them to the Caucasus Mountains. You had some brothers who was hiding white women, fell in love and was hiding them, and was mating and whatnot, and that created a whole new population in the Middle East. That's how that took place. But nevertheless, so they killed the Moor. Ganga Zumba and them killed the Moor who led the Portuguese. And there's something funny about the Portuguese. The Portuguese, they look like a whole nation of mulattoes who claim to be Europeans, but that's a story for a later date. You know what I mean? That's a story for a later date. You know they got a drop in there somewhere. Anyway, but they were brutal against the darker skinned indigenous people, natives to the land of Brazil. As I stated, the Portuguese didn't get to Brazil till the April in the 1500s. And these black folks were spread out already in Brazil. They left Africa thousands of years ago and brought the culture to Brazil with them when they left. So when the Portuguese came with these slaves, they thought that the slaves would be on their side to fight against their own brethren. Man, are you crazy? So anyway, so they fought and they fought and they fought. And they couldn't defeat Ganga Zumba. So then Zumba, Z-U-M-B-I, was the grandson of Aquitaine. He took over after Ganga Zumba was poisoned. He took over and he ruled and kept fighting against the Portuguese until 1796, until where he was defeated in battle. But the point I'm trying to make is their motto was, we would rather die than be a slave. Somebody else said that, but recently. But yeah, black folks would rather die than be slaves. And that was the motto. But this is America's history. North, South, Central America, the Americas. We got to start incorporating black people on Black History Month, on MLK Day, or any black holiday you got. Incorporate these warriors like Ganga Zumba, like Gasca Yanga, fought in Mexico and defeated the Spanish. Same scenario. And they be trying to make it. See, the problem is you can have a white person, man, a slave trader, slave ship, can bring in 100 Africans in bondage for slavery, right? But try to make you think that 100 populated that whole, that all of the blacks that was in the land came to that country in bondage when there was indigenous blacks who were already there, is the point I'm trying to make. And you mix the captured slaves you brought in Africa with the free natives that was already there. And then you labeled them all the same, and then you wrote in the history books that the reason why you got blacks like in Veracruz, Mexico, is due to slavery. Reason why you got blacks in Brazil is because of the culture that they brought to Brazil during slavery. Reason why you got blacks all over the Americas is because they got there through slavery. And now what I'm saying is that's not history. That's a lie. Some black folk were already there in North America. They were already there in Central America. They were already there in South America. Because your history says that. And as it was stated, the Portuguese didn't make it to Brazil until the 1500s. As a matter of fact, the month was April. And when they got there, they saw all these indigenous, indigo black people that outnumbered the slaves that they brought with them on the ships. The black people in America outnumbered the slaves that they brought with. Matter of fact, that's why you got the story of John Horse. John Horse defeated the military army all up and down Florida. But the slaves and the indigenous came together. They tried to separate and say, you Negro, you Indian. Y'all stay separate and y'all fight amongst each other. But what they failed with the colonizer, excuse me, we're gonna call I want to say the white man, we're gonna call him the colonizer. What the colonizer failed to realize is you can bring a slave from Africa to the Americas, right? But what he didn't realize was that native black that been in the America, once they start communicating and they start noticing each other's tradition and saying, yeah, I know you, and they come together. So it became very important to keep the divide. We're going to divide them through the media. We're going to divide them through music. We're going to divide them through skin color. We're going to divide them through hair texture. We're going to divide them from the old to the young. We're going to divide them from female to male, male to female, young male, old male. Basically what I'm saying is they've been Willie lynching us and still Willie lynching us today. Or with the Willie Lynch doctrine is still working on us to this very day. But I want to thank Miss Carla for suggesting the Ganga Zumba topic that we're discussing today on this Martin Luther King celebration, because the struggle continues. It's not over. We got things to do. If you all heard over the weekend, they arrested 3 white supremacists from a group called the Base, who was plotting attacks and wanted to start a race war. And the FBI arrested them. And it's like, that's old too. Black folks, look, nobody's afraid. It's like when you've been dealing with something for so long, to where it gets to the point to where it's like, yeah, whatever. To where it's like it's played out. It's 2020. Nobody's running, ducking, and hiding, worrying about some nationalist group that don't like black people or this and that, when black people starting to realize that we've been here. And look, all black men, all black women, y'all hear this now on MLK Day. Do not walk around the Americas. I don't give a damn what city you in. Do not walk around here like you are a second-class citizen, or like you are a former slave, or like you don't belong here. This is your land, and you walk this land like this is your land. You walk this land like you proud. You don't get out the way. They get out your way because you've been here before all of them. So you don't walk. When you walking down the street, you have them get out of your way. This is your lane. They should be asking you for a passage. Can I get a pass? or thanking you for allowing them to share your land. You walk. How the minister say? You walk heavy on the earth. We walking around here tiptoeing like you ducking and hiding. That's like you that's like you can't stick your chest out in your own damn house. You walking around scared and hiding, afraid of what somebody might do to you in your own damn house. Can't live like that. Can't live like that. Do the research. Yeah, matter of fact, look. Matter of fact, you know what? A lot of the slaves that came from Africa mixed in with the native blacks that were already here. So that makes you, once you mixed in, you part of the tribe. So you part of the original too. You made it, you mixed in. You got some inheritance right here on this land. So walk like it, act like it, talk like it. Verbal Pick Radio. We're out.